are as old as humanity itself. They tell tales of anger and hatred, greed and suffering, death and depravity. Nothing affords us a deeper look into the sinister depths of a past epoch than the crimes committed during it. Many criminal cases of the distant past still remain unsolved today. No one had the tools to detect the perpetrators, but what was then impossible can now be done. Today's cutting-edge forensic science offers methods for solving many cold cases of antiquity. High-tech diagnostic and forensic procedures help to solve crimes that for centuries had left people scratching their heads. Arsonists are identified, conspirators convicted, and murderers unmasked. The perpetrators may be long dead, but their crimes live on. In this episode, we investigate the insurrection of an itinerant preacher, the oldest murder in human history, and a spectacular case of high treason. A young preacher rebelled against the establishment and founded a religion that would sweep the world. Jerusalem, capital city of the Roman province Judea in the year 30 AD. A man had been sentenced to death on the cross. Literally excruciating, this gruesome method of execution could stretch out over several days, while the condemned slowly asphyxiated.
Crucifixion was a common form of punishment imposed by the Romans throughout the empire. It's something that they invented. Now, this is not for the Roman citizen. This is for the slave, this is for the non-citizen, and of course, it's very public in terms of being an execution. It's something that serves as a big deterrent to everyone else. Do not go against the Romans.
This condemned man bore the name Jesus of Nazareth. After his death on the cross, Jesus would, as tradition has it, be resurrected from the dead. This miracle was the founding impulse for Christianity. But the whole story is actually quite possibly based on deception. The State Museum of Art and Culture in Münster, Germany. Historian Johannes Fried has scientifically studied the resurrection. Since antiquity, there have in fact been repeated attempts to find a rational explanation for the miracle.
Early on, some speculated that it hadn't even been Jesus on the cross. Then, in the era of the evangelists, stories began to emerge that the corpse had been stolen by his disciples. Some even named the thief as Judas Iscariot. Finally, in the 18th century Age of Enlightenment, a new idea arose: suspended animation.
Could it be that Jesus didn't die on the cross at all? Or did his corpse disappear because his disciples took it? There are many theories that could expose the miracle of the resurrection as a fraud. But what really happened back then? Flashback. In the year 30 AD, Jesus, like many others, wandered the Holy Land as a simple traveling preacher.
In the time of Jesus, there were many popular speakers, preachers that reached out to the masses. Jesus stands out because he seems to have appealed to more people and also people from various stations in life.
We think that women flock to him in quite some numbers, for two reasons, I think. Partly because he is preaching a form of social justice and equality, very ahead of his day. Also because the early Christian church met in houses, in homes, and women ran the homes at the time.
Jesus was apparently extremely successful in his efforts and quickly gained regional acclaim. His following grew rapidly, also due to his numerous female adherents, a scandal at a time when women were considered second-rate devotees. In April of the year 30, Jesus arrived in Jerusalem. Tens of thousands of pilgrims were in town to celebrate Passover, a perfect setting for the young preacher. But from the moment Jesus appeared in the holy city, he had aroused the suspicion of the authorities. Just days later, he would die on the cross.
Jesus comes into conflict with the Jewish authority, and he's going to call them out for what he sees as discrepancies and what they're supposed to be doing and how society is supposed to function. So you're getting the peaceful Jesus, you're getting the kind of rabble-rousing Jesus, you're getting the person who's challenging authority.
Jesus was not just the beatific preacher he is portrayed as today. The man from Nazareth knew full well that his arrival in Jerusalem was a provocation. His visit to the Temple Mount, the most significant religious center in Judaism, brought things to the boiling point. Jesus denounced the heathen money changers and merchants outside the temple for hawking sacrificial animals to the pilgrims, forcefully castigating them for their greed.
Creating quite a scene amidst that activity and trying to forcibly eject them leads him into confrontation with the Council of Elders, and really they see what his actions are a crime.
That very same night, High Priest Caiaphas had Jesus arrested. The Jewish grandee wanted to get the charismatic religious rabble-rouser off the streets as fast as possible. Caiaphas and the Jewish Council of Elders could not, however, sentence Jesus themselves. They had to rely on the Roman rulers for that.
Pontius Pilate at the time was the provincial governor of Judea. So he's got the full authority of Rome behind him. He can make these capital decisions. So he was the law.
To get the desired sentence, the high priest needed damning evidence. He interrogated Jesus, asked if he was the Messiah. Jesus said yes, an outrage. The term Messiah then referred specifically to the king of the Israelites anointed by God to liberate all Jews from foreign rule.
Jesus isn't the only one in his time period that's been considered the Messiah. But definitely whenever this does happen, when it gets on the Romans' radar, it's definitely going to be a problem because this is a person that's directly challenging the authority of the rulers of the land, in this case, the Romans.
The answer Jesus gave was an attack both on the religious leaders of the Council of Elders and the political elite who ruled Judea. For the Romans, that made Jesus a terrorist, openly challenging their power. Jesus was brought to trial. Pontius Pilate would deliver the verdict.
The Romans tended to leave people within the provinces to go about their business, to do their own worship, to live their own lives. But when you went against and challenged the ultimate authority, then you had a problem with Rome, and Rome came down hard every time.
The Bible reports that Roman judges also presided over the legal matters of the Jews, who had demanded the execution of Jesus. But this scenario was disinformation, added later on. Most of the evangelists tried to pin the death of Jesus on the Jews to promote the superiority of their own faith. In the end, the Roman rulers of Judea sentenced Jesus to death.
I think when we look at what Jesus is doing, what he's doing publicly, what he's doing, in the public eye before a large part of the population, I think he was smart enough to understand what the risks he was running and ultimately where the authority was within society.
Arrest, interrogation, and trial, all done and dusted in a single night. The verdict was a rush to judgment. The sentence carried out early the next morning. Jesus died on the cross early that afternoon, according to the Bible. Munich. Internist Maximilian Ledechowski has studied the biological processes that occur in the human body during a death by crucifixion.
Crucifixion is especially gruesome because it is such a slow death. After hanging for a long time on the cross, you don't have enough oxygen uptake to do the job of breathing. In other words, you asphyxiate.
But evidence suggests that the crucifixion of Jesus did not follow standard procedure. Normally, people hung on the cross for days before dying. Jesus is reported to have been dead within just hours. Could this be explained by another torture in advance?
The verdict passed on Jesus Christ was clearly different from that of a normal crucifixion because he was flagellated beforehand. That is, he was already in a very bad state.
According to the Gospel of John, Jesus was flogged. The instrument used was most likely a horribile flagellum, a leather strap enhanced with pieces of bone, lumps of lead or spikes that inflicted severe injury. The Gospel of John also reveals another striking detail of the crucifixion.
It is written that the lance of Longinus pierced Jesus in the side, causing blood and water to stream out. There's really no better way of describing a hemorrhagic pleural effusion, an effusion between the lung and the pleuron that this wound would have caused.
The biological process on the cross could have been as follows. The torture had caused a large amount of fluid to collect between the lungs and their outer membrane, the pleura, a situation called a pleural effusion, which had compressed the lungs. The crucifixion would then have led to acute respiratory distress, unconsciousness, and finally, death.
A hemorrhagic pleural effusion like this is treated by tapping the effusion to drain the fluid.
Is this what happened to Jesus? Could he have fallen into death-like unconsciousness on the cross as a result of a pleural effusion? Piercing it with a lance could actually have saved his life by allowing the edema to drain. What would have happened afterwards? Jesus would have been entombed while in a state of suspended animation and later regained consciousness. In other words, Jesus would have been resurrected, but not as in the biblical tradition from the dead. But where would Jesus have gone after surviving the crucifixion? How would he have spent the rest of his life?
Jesus, having survived, could not then be the one who was crucified and resurrected. Rather, he would have been a rabbi who continued to do what he had done before, preaching, healing, roaming the desert. What remains is the teaching, the message, the real essence of Jesus.
There are no reliable sources for his probable post-crucifixion whereabouts. For his followers, the empty tomb became the symbolic birthplace of Christianity, and thus proof that Jesus was in fact the Messiah sent by God. Whether explained in terms of natural science or the supernatural, the resurrection still serves as the founding moment of Christianity, with over 2 billion followers, the world's largest faith community today. Some of them might find the notion disquieting that this ancient religion of worldwide reach could be based on a case of suspended animation. Human bones, discovered in a Stone Age cave, led to what is perhaps the world's oldest murder case. The scene of the crime? The Zagros Mountains in the far north of modern-day Iraq, close to the Turkish border. Inhospitable terrain that around 50,000 years ago was likely home to 2 types of human, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. In Shanidar Cave, archaeologists first discovered the remains of 10 Neanderthals in 1953. Initially, experts speculated that the dead were victims of Stone Age hunting accidents. Because even during the last ice age, the Zagros Mountains were an outstanding big game hunting range. Small hunting parties of Neanderthals presumably pursued bears, bison, and mammoths there. But encounters with these dangerous animals could often prove fatal for the prehistoric hunters. At Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, evolutionary anthropologist Stephen Churchill has studied the case. He is unconvinced of the hunting accident theory because a rib from Shanidar 3, as the victim has been designated, shows a conspicuous injury.
If we look at the rib, we can be sure that this isn't an injury from an animal, because animal attacks tend to create fractures, they tend to create bite marks, and this is clearly a very nice, clean wound.
Over 130 bones have been ascribed to Shanidar 3. The rib cage of this Neanderthal man has been almost completely reconstructed. Only the 9th left rib of the skeleton bears an unusual injury, which must have been inflicted by a smooth, sharp blade. Forensic pathologists have determined that the injury must have occurred a good while before death.
You can also see that the bone has responded to the injury, and there's been some healing.
A computer simulation of the probable injury scenario. A blade had most likely struck the rib before penetrating the lung behind it. The victim died either because the injured organ collapsed or because the deep wound became infected. Death had come several hours to several days after the attack, but the question remained, who done it? An injury can often indicate the weapon that caused it, and sometimes it even helps to narrow the field of suspects. Neanderthals made weapons out of flintstone, chipping symmetrical pieces from larger blocks. The resulting blades were triangular, with razor-sharp edges. The blades were held in hand or mounted on the ends of wooden rods to make the Neanderthals two weapons of choice: stone knives and spears. The reconstruction of Shanidar 3's injury confirms that the weapon must have penetrated the rib cage at an oblique angle from above. Which of the weapons could have caused this injury? An archaeological weapons experiment would hopefully answer the question. Mike Lodes, expert for historic weapons, joined forces with weapons and ammunitions expert Philippe Cachet.
This is fantastic. I mean, you can see so many details. This is possibly the oldest homicide known to history. What we know is that he has cut marks through his ribs. Somehow he was stabbed or speared through there. It is definitely a murder. Now, you have created this so that we can experiment with different weapons. What's this made of?
This is a ballistic gelatine, and it's used for forensic science issues, so for court procedures and science work to show how bullets react inside a human body. So it has the consistency of a real human body, so it's hard, so you can hit it. It has the same strength, and the tissue, it's all similar to the human ones.
So this is exactly the same and as tough as my muscle?
Yes.
What have you made the bones from?
The bones are made from a secret cast, so I can't tell you the ingredients, but it's also quite similar to the human ones, and can be used to show stab wounds, shot wounds, and you have the same reaction like the human bone has.
But it has been accepted scientifically that this will stand up in court. This is something that will give us real evidence.
Yes, and it's perfect for what you want to do.
And I also can feel that this has got some human weight to it. So when we strike it, it will have exactly the same inertia as if we were stabbing with a knife or with a spear 50,000 years ago. So what we do know is that the weapon, whatever it was a stone weapon made of stone. This is a simple stone knife. Now, people think of, I mean, I'm just going to come around here, because people think of stone knives as perhaps not being the sharpest thing in the world. But, I mean, I can use this, and it will cut this flesh very cleanly. That's a real weapon. Which rib did it go in?
It was the 9th rib, so if we count it down, we stop like here. We have to think what maybe happened. So if he comes from the back, he can grab his head and he can step like this.
Yeah, I think that gives me a stronger position. So
I can put it over for you.
Move him back there, you see, and then I'm gonna say...
You grab him.
Gotcha. Okay, and I can just get him slightly turned as I do that. So we have got to get it that we're going in there. Listen to the bones.
The bone is gone.
They're just torn away.
Let's have a look inside.
And the bone is completely
cut.
Clean cut.
Yeah.
But that was almost doing too much damage. It's not a perfect match. That is not exactly what we see on the skeleton.
The archaeological experiment showed that a Stone Age knife would have completely penetrated the rib. That would have caused a much more significant injury pattern than Shanidar 3 displays. That left only the spear as the plausible weapon. The image of a projectile springs to mind, but Neanderthals didn't usually throw their spears. Instead, they would creep up to within a few meters of their target and then thrust the spear into the body with full force.
We know that a big, heavy thrusting spear tends to carry a lot of momentum and a lot of kinetic energy, and it tends to do massive damage to the ribs. You get multiple involvement of the ribs, so that even if the point has not directly contacted a rib, it's bent the ribs such that the ribs around the affected rib break.
Even a spear thrust would have caused much more damage to the rib cage. But what if the perpetrator in the murder of Shanidar had thrown his spear after all? A second archaeological experiment would answer the question.
We have here Jürgen Jonkmans, hello, thank you for coming, who is an expert both in making and using paleo weapons. So we have a selection here. This is a spear for throwing. Look how beautifully tapered it is. This isn't just a stone point on a bit of stick. This is a crafted, balanced weapon so that you really can get some great accuracy with that. So I'm going to give you that pressure. Thank you. And if you could throw that into our man and see if you can break a rib.
Jürgen Jonkmans threw the spear with high precision at the ballistics torso. The spear hit the bullseye. But what damage had he done?
And you can see how this shattered on the bone. So you were not throwing at full power because you wanted to throw for accuracy. So it was a relatively gentle throw.
Despite the reduced force, the spear did inflict a massive wound.
Look how deep. So that means it's not entirely consistent with the injury we see on the Neanderthal body.
A thrown spear shatters a human rib cage, causing severe damage. But the skeleton of Shanidar 3 presents only a small notch in a single rib. This was no open and closed case. Who or what had injured Shanidar 3? It is possible that at that time, new rivals had just begun to appear in his habitat, and they would have been potential perpetrators too.
Shanidar 3 lived in northern Iraq somewhere about 45 to 50,000 years ago. And we know from archaeological evidence that modern humans were starting to expand out of Africa at that time.
Homo sapiens left the African homeland and moved into new territories. These areas, including the Zagros Mountains, were very likely often already home to another early human, the Neanderthal.
We know that Neanderthals and modern humans certainly met at times and in places because everyone who has ancestry from Europe or Asia carries some Neanderthal genes. Sometimes it's probably relatively peaceful and there are exchanges of culture, exchanges of genes. Sometimes they may have been wary of each other and just tried to avoid each other. Sometimes there might have been violent interactions between them.
Was Shanidar perhaps killed by one of our ancestors? Homo sapiens used different weapons than the Neanderthal because the modern human being was of slighter build in comparison. To deal with this disadvantage, Homo sapiens avoided close combat and developed increasingly sophisticated long-distance weapons. That put another crime weapon on the table, the spear thrower.
It's an extremely old weapon. Lots of cultures have it. The Aztecs call it the atalat. The Australians call it the woomera. It's like a spear, heavy at this end, it tapers to this end, and it's stabilized with flights at this end. The way it's thrown is with a special stick that has this spur on the end. So the spur fits into a notch at the end, and you hold it like that. So as you throw it, this acts as a lever. So you've got a longer lever to your throwing arm. But more than that, because of this heavy end, there is an inertia. And so as it goes forward, the dart does this. It swims its way to the target. The energy is stored, and it really waggles into the target.
Jürgen Jungmanns once again took aim at the ballistic gelatin torso. What injuries would the modern human's weapon leave behind?
This is interesting again. Well, it bounced out. This is much more interesting than we thought. Looked like it bounced out. The shafts bounced out, but look, we have a wound, we have an injury. The point is in, and I can hear that sawing on the bone. What do you think, Philip? That's gone in about the right amount of depth.
Definitely, definitely. And it doesn't matter if it is how it comes inside, even if it gets back a little bit ejected. If you have the scratches, you hear there is a contact to the bone.
Yeah.
So if we take it out, we can maybe see some scratch, or we can feel it. When you feel the bone, you feel that there is a cut in it. Let's try.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
If you look at Shanidar 3, it's not a big injury.
No.
It's a small cut on
the bone.
One bone.
Yeah. And here is also
And
just
this
one.
is consistent with that. Good shot, Jürgen. Good shot. You've got it there. And I can, to me, this seems the most likely. The size of head is only damaging one rib. Just a quarter of the rib. It's cut in. That is consistent. And what we know is that Neanderthal man did not use the atalat. Only Homo sapiens, our species, used the atalat.
A spear thrower, the weapon of Homo sapiens, apparently caused injuries that perfectly match those of Shanidar 3. Only one puzzle piece was still missing. Did Homo sapiens already have spear throwers in the time period of the murder?
Based on archaeological evidence, it appears that the spear thrower was invented in Africa by our ancestors, possibly as early as 100,000 or a little bit before that, years ago. And as our ancestors expanded out of Africa, they carried that technology with them.
So the case of Shanidar 3 did point to an act of interspecies aggression. A Homo sapiens had killed a Neanderthal. In other words, it seems one of our early ancestors committed the first known murder in human history in the Zagros Mountains. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are thought to have coexisted for several thousand years. But then the Neanderthals died out. Various theories ponder the cause. Had a food shortage sealed the Neanderthals' fate? Had the new humans introduced viruses and bacteria against which the Neanderthals had no immunity? Or was their extinction down to brutal aggression after all?
I don't think it was a simple case of genocide where invading modern humans just moved into Neanderthal territory and wiped them out. I think it was much more complex than that and happened in very different ways in different places at different times.
Rome. An act of treason brought the greatest military power of the age to its knees. What really happened? Germania, in the year 9 AD. After years of fighting, the Roman Empire had conquered most of the region. To secure the new territories, 3 Roman legions, an eighth of the entire Roman imperial army, were on the march in the heartland of Germania. The soldiers never suspected that they would soon fall foul of an historic act of treason. Roman officer Arminius had changed sides. Led by the traitor, Germanic forces achieved the seemingly impossible. In a battle of several days, they delivered the military superpower a crushing blow.
The end result is a historic defeat for the Romans. And the incredible thing is, at the time, Rome was unquestionably the greatest military power in the land, and here they are being defeated by people that are numerically inferior, that have really inferior technology. It's an incredible upset.
This reputation as being a humiliating horror for the idea that was Rome.
In the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, the Romans met with an epic defeat due to the betrayal. But what had prompted Arminius to commit treason? And how could the defection of a single man have led to such disastrous consequences? The clues lie in a period decades earlier. The Germanic areas on the southern or left side of the Rhine were already under Roman rule. The cities of Cologne, Trier, and Xanten were established at that time. But the regions to the right of the Rhine were still far from subdued.
The province of Germania is very important to the Romans. They've decided on this policy of imperial expansion. What they want to enjoy is an empire without limits. And for them, this is the frontier. So it really matters to them, both in material terms, but also psychologically. This is a boundary that they want to secure.
Following several more decades of concerted effort, in the year 7 AD, Rome had finally reached its goal. Germania appeared to have been conquered. Emperor Augustus dispatched his trusted deputy, Publius Quinctilius Varus, to govern the province. Varus levied taxes, introduced Roman law, and met uprisings with a heavy hand.
Varus was very well connected as an individual. He had intimate relations with Augustus and his family. So he's a kind of man who is trusted. He's actually not a great military strategist. He's more of an organizer.
He's already proven his worth in governing a province. And of course, that it could include military engagement and activities, but that's not why he's sent there. He's sent there because he's got the right status, he's got the right resume, and he's a person representing the empire in managing a very important part of the empire.
Answering to Varus was also a young officer named Arminius. Born in Germania, he had been abducted by the Romans as a child, and like many other children from other provinces, brought to Rome to be raised there as a Roman. Arminius entered the military as a young man. He eventually achieved knighthood and was rewarded for his military prowess with Roman civil liberties.
He is a person who has two kinds of identities. And one of the ideas was, as you kind of incorporate some of the best and brightest from the provinces into the Roman system, you send them to Rome, you kind of indoctrinate them.
Arminius had returned to his homeland in Varus' entourage. But after 2 years back in Germania, he secretly banded together with the local Germanic tribes and planned a bloody uprising. But why had he betrayed Rome?
It's a brutal age, but there is something about the cold strategy of Roman extermination, which I wonder just chilled him to the core. So he'd have come back to what was in effect his homeland. He'd have seen the mass murder and massacre, not just of soldiers, but of women and children. And I wonder if just psychologically he snaps and he realizes that this is a new world order he actually doesn't want to be a part of.
Despite his Roman upbringing, Arminius became a traitor. As the leader of a Germanic corps, he brought the Roman imperial superpower to its knees. How did he manage to achieve this stunning victory over the far superior military might of Rome? There are no Germanic reports of the event. Roman chroniclers, including Seneca, make only brief mention of it, blaming Varus or other external factors for the defeat. Heavy rain, for example, was said to have stymied the legionnaires' battle tactics and rendered one of their key weapons inoperative. The device in question was a special high-tech piece of artillery, a torsion bolt-shooting catapult. Hans-Werner Berg and Markus Goski reconstructed just such a weapon as part of a research project.
The weapon is very powerful. We did ballistics tests with iron slabs, which we see here. This is basically a socket bolt, and here we have a 2mm steel plate. At a distance of 100 meters, we shot right through, so we can certainly say that the armor or protective shields used in antiquity would have been no match for this artillery.
This weapon is known as a torsion bolt catapult because it uses torsion action. Bundles of spring rope are twisted in opposite directions, building up energy. When they are released, the tension immediately shoots the quarrel or bolt with a sinew catapult.
This is the spring rope bundle, here made of horsehair. And this bundle, when the arms are turned and pulled back, twisting and pulling the sinew taut, the somewhat elastic hair is also stretched. And when the shot is fired, these forces are immediately set free. The arms are twisted, the sinew snaps forward, shooting the bolt.
The bolt is catapulted with enormous force and has a range of about 300 meters, depending on the angle of attack. The effective combat distance, however, is significantly shorter. The catapult was aimed at a target 50 meters away. Even at this distance, every shot went awry. The torsion bolt shooting catapult is hardly a precision weapon. Had Roman historians wildly exaggerated the importance of the weapon to downplay the humiliating defeat? A rapid-fire test at a whole group of targets would hopefully resolve the matter. After all, a battle isn't a one-on-one confrontation. It's a clash of whole armies. Hans-Werner Berg and Markus Goski had 1 minute in which to hit as many targets as possible. The two work hand in glove. Crank, load, fire. The dream team took less than 10 seconds per shot. With the close cluster of targets, the rate of success rose considerably. Suddenly, the high praise for the ancient wonder weapon started to make sense. The result after 1 minute, 6 bolts fired and 3 hits.
Einmal Schulter und einmal.
Once in the shoulder and once straight through the head. As we can see from the test here today, it's quite clear that this weapon was more suitable for mass shooting. This type of distribution here gives us a much higher hit rate. The farther a bolt like this flies, the greater the wind influence, the drift factor. So these aren't precision projectiles, but shot into a dense mass of bodies, they do have a devastating effect. Here we had hits, especially in the head and torso, mainly the chest area, which would certainly have been fatal injuries.
Every legion had 60 of these torsion catapults in its arsenal. So the 3 legions under Varus were armed with 180 of these weapons alone. That means a total of at least 1,000 bolts a minute could have been fired. The same as a modern machine gun. But the battle between the Romans and Germanic tribesmen took place under arduous conditions. And apparently, the sensitive Roman projectiles were soon too wet to be of much use. Roman torsion bolt catapults were made of mainly natural materials, wood, hair, and sinews. So their physical characteristics could change when wet. Is the Roman historical record correct in reporting that heavy rain had plagued the Roman soldiers in the battle? An artillery test in a similar downpour would hopefully bring certainty. What effect would rain have on the wonder weapon with its natural materials? A professional rain machine was on hand to simulate the heavy rainfall. For over an hour, the artificial rain drenched the piece of heavy artillery. All systems go for the second test. The goal, as many shots as possible within a minute. Would the torsion bolt shooting catapult work, or would it fail? Nothing blocked, nothing locked, nothing snapped. The weapon worked without a hitch. Only one issue remained, the human factor. Would Team Torsion be able to shoot just as many bolts despite the downpour? The result? 6 shots per minute, with or without rain.
The torsion weapon worked just as well before and after the rain. In fact, we even shot a bit farther in the rain, because with the moisture, the hair bundles became more elastic. For an opponent standing in a mass of people, even at a greater distance, the effect would be absolutely disastrous. Such weapons create extreme distress, especially psychologically. I can be hit. I'm vulnerable. There's no way my weapon can reach my opponent.
Roman chroniclers tell us the soldiers lost the battle because they were plagued by rain. False, at least according to the test with their high-tech weapon. An apparent case of Roman propaganda. There had to be another reason why the Romans, superior in technology and way outnumbering their Germanic opponents, were defeated. Perhaps a clue to solving the case could be found slumbering in the earth of the Teutoburg Forest. There are hundreds of theories about where exactly the famous battle there took place. Kalkriese in the countryside near Osnabrück is considered the most likely site. In recent years, archaeologist Salvatore Ortizi and his team have made finds that leave little room for doubt.
We've recovered about 4,000 artifacts to date, most of them parts of military equipment, but also personal objects that were transported in the baggage train or with the retinue of the Roman military. The finds clearly show that a battle did occur, and the large number of them shows that what happened here was doubtless an intense, larger-scale combat scenario.
At a natural choke point, ruins were also found of what seemed to be a wall. A reconstruction shows what the structure might have looked like. Had Arminius led the Roman superpower into an ambush? During excavations at the wall, Salvatore Ortizi made a stunning discovery. A large collection of Roman coins from the time of the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest.
The cash amounts to over 200 denarii. That's a whole lot of coins. It's a very exceptional find, and clearly too much money for the coin purse of a simple soldier. The sheer quantity and weight means it was quite a sum, and it's very likely part of a larger cash reserve that made its way into the ground.
The find was apparently a Roman war chest, and the site of its excavation indicates that the wall was not part of a Germanic fortress, but a Roman defense installation. What was previously thought to have been a Germanic ambush site could, in fact, have been a Roman army field camp, set up on the fly and soon abandoned again just as suddenly.
Right away, this wall structure looks unusual because it's not linear and doesn't conform to the edge of the slope. A typical Roman camp wall would have run along a straight line. Here we have a corrugated structure with these many openings reconstructed here. So that doesn't speak for a standard Roman camp.
Germanic ambush or makeshift Roman fort, whichever it is, the finds from Kalkriese present a possible explanation for the surprise Germanic victory. Arminius succeeded in luring Varus into inopportune terrain. Then, deep in the Teutoburg Forest, the Roman army and Germanic tribes faced off in combat. Arminius leveraged his strategic advantages with perfect skill. A densely forested area cut through with deep gorges and craggy cliffs. This formidable territory severely hindered the heavily armed Romans in their advance, forcing them to abandon their familiar formations.
There's a huge force, between 15 and 20,000 regular troops. So we think that the train of the army was somewhere between 15 and 20 kilometers long.
The Germanic troops, with their light weaponry, were able to advance unnoticed on the Romans scattered about in the rough terrain and inflict painful pinpoint attacks.
Arminius used classic guerrilla warfare tactics. He knew the land, he knew the people, and he knew that if we could draw in and control when the attacks would take place, that the Romans would be at a great disadvantage. So it's really setting up moments in which he could confront and surprise the Romans right when they weren't aware of it. And of course, knowing the lay of the land much better, he had control of the situation.
Arminius was ultimately able to conquer the Roman superpower because he had intimate knowledge of its strengths and weaknesses. He wrestled his opponent to the ground in a long, drawn-out war of attrition carried out at various sites. The idea of a single decisive battle will have to be amended. Following the defeat, Rome did make further attempts to conquer regions north of the Rhine. But right up to its decline and fall, the Roman Empire maintained a firm grip only on the areas to the left or south of the Rhine.
For Germania, this proves that it's almost impossible to take the territories north of the Rhine. So this gives that whole province a kind of really remarkable sense of itself. And Germania and the Germanic tribes, in a way, become the bogeymen for the Roman idea. They're always the ferocious, unpredictable, fighting men who have to be conquered, who have to be destroyed, but they know that this is almost going to be an impossibility. So it creates a kind of ghoul in the psyche of Rome.
And the two leading men? Varus, the vanquished, committed suicide still on the battlefield to spare himself the humiliation of defeat. Just a few years later, Arminius was murdered by members of his own tribe and fell into obscurity for centuries. He only stepped back into the limelight with the founding of the German Empire.
Historically, looking at Arminius, he takes on a larger-than-life profile because when Germany, particularly in the 19th century, is looking forward to instill itself with its own greatness and its own expansion and its own empire, they look to historical figures. And Arminius becomes this kind of quasi-mythological, legendary figure who stood up against the great Roman Empire.
Arminius was glorified as a popular German hero. His name was changed to Hermann, and the exploits of the Germanic tribes were suddenly those of the Germans. What remains of the hero worship today is the image of a skillful military strategist who saw his chance and was willing to commit treason to take it.